Hello and welcome,
Hi.
Hannah and Jenny. Thank you so much for being here. Jenny, I'm stoked that you're here because you have years and years of experience as a classroom teacher. You even taught PE for a while, and you are raising 3 wonderful boys. And so your experience on the topic we're going to talk about today, which is sleep and circadian rhythms, is phenomenal. Dr. Beyer, as a school psychologist, as a doctorate in psychology holder, and a classroom teacher in high school. You taught high school English, right? And so how many years have you been doing working in education? How many years?
Oh, I would say about 16 years now.
16 years. Okay, so there's a lot of experience at this table, and you're similar
This
amount
is
of
year
time.
16,
You're 16,
yeah.
yeah. So I think you and I started here at Literacy First at the same time,
Yeah,
same year,
probably.
16 years. So there is a ton of experience and knowledge at this table on this topic. So we're going to talk about one thing, but there's two kind of topics within. One is simply sleep patterns, and the other one is called circadian rhythms. I'm going to jump to Dr. Beyer. Would you like to define circadian rhythm? What even is a circadian rhythm?
Sure. So it's a 24-hour cycle that
Okay.
animals and humans we have. There's awake time and
Okay.
there's sleep time. And we naturally, innately have it. And it's really cool that our body is designed to look for certain things. So we have neurons in our eyes that take in light that will trigger
Okay.
that 24-hour cycle
Okay.
to know when to be awake and to know when to be asleep.
Got it. So effectively setting our circadian rhythms, which we can kind of have some control on setting, will help us know when it's time to wake up and when it's time to go to bed. And I think we all know that sometimes we'll go to bed and then the next morning we know when our alarm's going to go off. Let's say 5:15 is when mine goes off. I can't tell you how many times I've woken up at 5:14 and been like, the alarm's not off, please. I look over and it's 5:14 and I'm like, dang, it's time to wake up. It's like that time you roll over and you hope it's like, I hope it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I can go back and you're like, nope,
That's
I'm waking up
best.
right now. Then your alarm goes off like that. And the reason why your body can be so exact with your rhythm and like when you wake up and go to sleep is because of your circadian rhythm, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Exactly.
So now that we've kind of got that out of the way, let's start with the first part of our conversation, which is what is the problem that we are seeing in the students that kind of attend our school or literally attend our school having to do with sleep, and how is it negatively impacting their ability to succeed in school or socially? Jenny, start with you.
I think technology is playing a huge part of it.
Oh.
I think that, we see a lot of kids the minute that they're getting in the car, they've got their technology. It's just there might not be a lot of structure on
Right.
when we're getting to use our phone or when we're getting to watch TV.
Right.
And so when we don't have that structure, then we're not necessarily getting the other things that we need to be getting, like
Right.
maybe that outside time or some downtime where our eyes are not watching a screen, whatever it might be. And so we're getting some really tired kids
Right.
at school.
Right. So effectively what you're saying is grabbing this thing and staring at it right here with the blue light that's on these phones
Right.
is not helping our brain set a correct circadian rhythm.
Absolutely.
And our sleep patterns are not correct.
I mean, actually, if the kids are on it too late at night,
Yep.
it's going to actually reset the clock, and they're going to end up going to sleep even later.
Right.
So it's shifting their whole bodily functions with sleeping, and then they're tired the next day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, tired the next day. That's
Yes.
one of the negative effects, right? So what are some other negative effects of lack of sleep or incorrect sleep that we are seeing at school?
I think the first thing that jumps in my mind is being able to regulate their emotions. Mood is so
Absolutely.
impacted by
Yeah.
sleep. And we have kids, especially Mondays when they're transitioning from the weekends,
Yeah.
because the sleep structure often gets thrown off on the weekends. They can't transition well to that Monday day at school. They're melting down or crying or getting upset over smaller things.
Yep.
Memory is impacted.
Absolutely.
They can't remember what they learned the day before. Teachers will do a warm-up question from something they learned just the day prior, and it's blank stares.
Right.
And
Let's stop on memory really quick. So memory, the way that our long-term memory is created is by having a full 4-hour REM sleep cycle. And kids need at least 2 of those, and sometimes 2.5. Like kids need about 10 hours of sleep. Like that's
Right.
just the baseline. Like we know that is a fact. And you can look at different things. So I've got
Yes.
my deal here by age, and it goes anywhere between 8 and 12 hours. 3 to 5-year-olds need 10 to 13 hours. 6 to 12-year-olds need 9 to 12 hours. 13 to 18-year-olds need 8 to 10 hours. So all the way up to 18 years old, you're still looking at 10 hours of sleep. So the REM sleep cycle is really important. And during that sleep cycle is when your short-term memories are taken from short-term kind of like your RAM, and put into long-term memory, which is like your memory, like we're talking about a computer, right? If we don't get a full sleep cycle, if we do not get the correct sleep cycle, or our sleep cycles are being interrupted all the time. We're talking, all of us are parents, and we're talking to parents, right? We all remember the first months of having a newborn in the house, when you sleep 30 minutes to 1 hour at a time. Now try to remember that time in your life.
It's a blur.
I have blurry memories of the first 6 months.
Even if you get 8 hours of sleep, when it's broken up into 2 hours, you're still exhausted the next day, even though you got your 8 hours.
And the reason why that is because your memories are not logged correctly and your brain has never reset. But when you get a full 8 hours of sleep, or at least for a full 4 at a time, that's when you can take long-term or short-term memories and put them in the long-term. That's kind of when you get to offload the RAM and your brain gets a break. So kids need that as well. So that's when you're talking about a sleep cycle, that is why memory is so negatively impacted by a lack of sleep. Okay, what else are we? Memory, what else?
Increase in absences. And if you think about our immune system and getting sick more often, we need sleep for our immune system to be strong. I mean, everything is, goes hand in hand, overlaps when you talk about screen time and nutrition and all of that. But sleep could be that one game changer for kids. And we as a school can't control that. Parents have to do that.
Right.
And we want to give some tools today to help with that.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Any other bad effects, like bad overlap that we're seeing at school in relation to poor sleep?
I think kind of like what we were saying about Mondays, I think it can just be a loss of time in the classroom that can be spent on other things.
Right.
We went out on Friday night to late night zoo, and so we stayed up an hour and 15 minutes later than normal, and we have paid for the last 2 days on that with my younger two. And just to see that there were things that we could have done yesterday, but we didn't, because we were paying for the fact that we went to the zoo for 2 hours the night before So I really think that at school, that really affects our kids who are well rested and are ready for the next thing, but we're needing to kind of find that middle balance and make sure that we're catching everybody.
I think one point to bring up before we go too far is sometimes you make a choice. We're gonna stay at the zoo an extra hour. That's okay to do.
Fun.
It's okay to do every once in a while. However, if that is the norm and our kids are not getting enough sleep, I mean, I've got the list of things, and this is what I've personally seen with kids. As the director of special education, when I get referrals sent to me that teachers are saying this kid might need additional support, they might have a learning disability, I have seen on multiple occasions that a student gets referred to me, and as I start asking questions, talking to a teacher, maybe even talking to a parent, I realize that, oh my gosh, one of the 4 things that are really important is way off. Sometimes it's not being outside enough, sometimes it's not getting enough exercise, they're not eating correctly, they're not getting the correct sleep, and typically being on their phone too much and sleep are the 2 that are married. These 2 work together all the time, because when kids are typically on their phones, it's after 6 o'clock, they're in their beds, they're swiping up and down, they're getting that dopamine hit, they're addicted to their phones. We know these things are addictions.
Well, and even when you put it down, how many times have you put your head down and then your phone buzzes? And even though you're halfway there, you're like, well, it could be important. It's not, but it could be important. And so once again, you turn that phone on and you're back in it.
So I have seen requests come to me that once I start asking questions about what's really going on at home, I find out that sleep is way off. And if we work with the family to help get the sleep back on, all of a sudden, all the things that were making us think there was an actual learning disability, like a disability, go away. So I believe strongly that across America, that we have students who are presenting, living life as if they have a learning disability, but really at the core of their problem is one of these major issues. Whether it's social media, phones, not being outside enough, not getting enough exercise, eating incorrectly, or one of the most important ones, which is sleep. And they're not getting correct sleep. Because lack of sleep increases anxiety, it increases depression, it increases their ability to not pay attention, so it decreases their ability to pay attention and focus. I mean, kids...
Focus is almost impossible for them.
Anybody will look like they have ADHD if they don't sleep for 3 days in a row. Anybody. That's kind of how we observe ADHD. Not being able to focus, not being able to remember, falling asleep in class. Those things all could be ADHD. They also could be you didn't sleep well, or you didn't sleep well and you didn't eat well, and you were stuck inside all day, all week. So, I mean, that's some of the major things that I've seen. This sleep thing is insanely important.
Absolutely.
And if we get it wrong, our kids are way off from where they should be.
And we want to teach those patterns now. We
Yes.
want to instill it in them and make it something that this is just what we do.
Yep.
So that as they get older and they have the freedom to make that choice for themselves, it's just going to be something that they will more naturally gravitate towards,
Totally.
Yeah,
even if things are changing.
The same way we want to create, children who grow up to make a difference in the world and to be healthy citizens, you're teaching them how to have healthy sleep habits, and they're going to carry that on to adulthood.
Totally. So anything else, before we close out this first little section, which is like, this is all the bad things about lack of sleep, anything else that we're seeing that is bad, that is a result of a lack of sleep?
I think we covered it all. I'm really glad you touched on anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's huge. It is really the first one that starts. I mean,
that
and
irritability.
We as adults literally can think about this. Is regular that we have days we don't sleep well, we wake up because our kids are sick or whatever. The next day we're a mess.
Right.
And we have adult kind of emotional regulation systems that sometimes don't function correctly when we don't get sleep. How are we supposed to expect our 5, 6, 7, 13, 14, 15, up to 18-year-old kids who are in school to have the same level of emotional control that we do as adults when we know we're a mess when we don't sleep right?
Right.
So we need to make sure sleep is important. Okay, so we've established no sleep bad. So what does it look like in the real world
Absolutely.
when this is right? Like, what do kids look like when they're getting the right amount of sleep? What does that look like?
Well, I think just routine in general is an important thing. So I know that that's kind of like an overarching thing, but talk to any substitute. If that sub strays from the sub plans or the way that the teacher calls kids to the carpet, the kids will instantly say, that's not how my teacher does it. Kids love structure and they love routine.
Yes.
They may not tell you that,
No, they
but
do.
we know that that's to be true. And they know that they have a little bit of control when things are predictable. And I think that having a sense of, okay, when I get home from school, this is what the rest of my day looks like. And then they feel like they're in control. There's not surprises here and there of like, oh, well, we're bouncing from this to this to this, and there's no structure in my day. But I think that just routine in general is just a good place to start.
Absolutely. What else? What does it look like when the kids at school have gotten the right amount of sleep?
I mean,
Like,
engaged.
how can you tell? Yeah.
Yep.
Learning is happening. Conversations are happening. Critical thinking is happening. And again, their memory is strong, and then they feel confident. They feel good about themselves. That self-esteem goes up. I mean, it's all related. And also maintaining friendships and being able to pick up on cues. So if they're too tired and their brain is kind of foggy, they're not going to pick up on their friends' facial expressions that they don't like what they're doing, and that could lead to a whole friendship fallout that could have been avoided just by having a good week of sleep.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, and I don't want to make too strong a case for this, but the way that we diagnose another disability, which is autism, is through observation. And the things that you just said, now you are a school psychologist as well, so you tell me that the things that you just said about social communication, reading nonverbal cues, those things, do those also correlate or do they cross over with what could look like autism?
100%.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Right?
I know. So your kids could be presenting, like you were talking about,
Right.
as if they fall under the DSM-5 for disabilities, but really they need the 4 foundations, which was the sleep, the nutrition, being outside,
Right.
and then removal of technology or structure around
Right,
technology.
and we want to make sure that's very clear that those diagnoses do exist.
Yes,
And
yes.
kiddos that have been diagnosed with autism can succeed very highly. And
Yes.
this is not saying that any of that is
Right.
is less real or less valuable. However, we want to make sure that the students that we have at this school, that we are observing what's going on accurately.
Right.
And if we can help someone support and increase their social skills and decrease their anxiety and increase their ability to pay attention and increase their memory and increase their ability to succeed in life,
Yep.
we're going to need to make sure first that they're getting the right amount of sleep, that their circadian rhythm is set correctly, that they're eating correctly, that they're playing outside, and that they're not obsessed with screens.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how does it in the real world work? Jenny, you're a pro at this.
Not really.
I mean, well, I think we all could say that because there are all these things, all of these
Right.
5 or 4 things, right? Sleep
Right.
and nutrition and social media and playing outside. Like, no one is perfect at these things, right? I mean, even the pros, it says
Sure.
that there's perfect, they're imperfect. You know, my mom once said that she used to teach parenting classes until my youngest, which is our 3rd born, was born, and he totally threw a wrench in her whole
Oh, of
program.
course.
And she had to stop teaching parenting classes because she was like, what have I done? So it's a little dig on my little brother, but none of us are perfect and we're all just kind of trying to get it. I still say that you're a pro. And how have you been able to set routines in your home and help your boys get consistent sleep most of the time?
Most of the time, absolutely. So we are big on routines at our house, whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday or it's a school day. We have pretty set routines in play. They know what to expect.
Okay.
We will have family meetings at breakfast. So if something's different that day, then obviously we need to be flexible. But they know what to expect after school. So
Okay.
for us, that involves bedtime being at the
Right,
same
right,
time
right.
every single night. So when we get home from school, the first thing we do is we have independent time. So I need to be checking folders, I need to be making sure that lunch boxes are being put away. So they have all their routine things that they do when they walk in the door.
Right.
But then there's about 30 minutes where no one is entertaining you, no one is going to be sitting on the floor playing blocks with you, but screens are not on. So you're gonna find something that you can do on your own. For my oldest, that means just laying on his floor, sometimes listening to an audiobook. It might be that he's playing Legos, but for the most part, he just kind of needs to decompress. For the 2 littles, that means that they are jumping off the walls. They might be in the backyard. They might just be chasing each other around. But there's a little bit of time where everybody's just kind of on their own.
Got it. So why is it so important that your kids have 30 minutes of unstructured play?
Right.
I mean, that's an important aspect of being a kid.
Absolutely. So there are going to be times when I cannot be your entertainment. In life, it's okay if you're bored, and that's where creativity comes, right? I read something where it was like, if kids aren't bored, the writer would never pick up a pen, the artist would never start doodling, all of those kinds of things,
I think
right? So
there's even
kids
a
need to have freedom to do
There's
that.
even a Bluey
Bluey
episode about boredom.
Bluey's the
Yes.
best.
And I will admit, I only have 2, so I can't imagine with 3 boys. Letting them be bored for a good amount of time can increase anxiety in parents. It can be hard for us.
Right.
But if you can just push through, and I've even had to set a timer for myself, like and I set it for 10 originally, but give them 5 minutes of boredom, and it is cool. The creativity and the imagination that comes out, and whatever they need. For example, you mentioned your older needs to decompress and needs to just have a minute in downtime. The others need to go outside, get that sunlight, and get their energy out.
Right.
They do what their bodies need at the time, and it's really important to let them have that freedom and to not feel like you have to control every minute.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for indulging me on the sidetrack.
Of course.
What's the next step? So you have 30 minutes of quiet, not quiet, 30 minutes of you not telling them what to do. They have to figure it out.
So then at that point in time, usually dinner is starting to be prepped. Somebody's usually involved in that. At that point in time, if a screen is going to be turned on, then that might be something for us. We just don't do screens Monday through Thursday. That works for us. I know that doesn't work for everyone. But and so we're usually making dinner. That's when we start prepping for the next day, which I know that sounds early, but that might just mean making sure that your backpack is ready. And then we sit down at the table together and we all eat. That's when the rich conversations happen. I mean, most of the time it's kind of a circus at our house with 3 boys and a husband and all of that, but that's when we really start talking about our day. And it's such a fun time. Dinner could be 10 minutes one night, it could be 45 minutes the next. So it's kind of nice that it's on the earlier end for us. And then after dinner, we start our bedtime routine. So usually if it's light enough, we might go back outside, we might go for a walk, we might run the dogs, we might just play outside doing something together or on the trampoline. But and then usually the showers, brushing teeth and getting your jammies on, and then we love playing games together. That is our favorite thing. We do have a little bit of an age gap, so finding a game that everybody wants to play can be a little challenging sometimes, but there are some really, really great games.
Give me some games.
Okay, so we love Kids on Stage. Kids on Stage is a charades game, but you don't have to be able to read. And there's 3 options. You're either an animal, you are an action, or you are, oh my goodness, what was the third one? It's red, blue, and green. And so you just pull your card After you spin the wheel, you got a blue. Okay, so you pull it and you're an animal. So you're gonna waddle around the room like a penguin because your picture is a penguin.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've been playing that game since my kids were little.
That's
and
awesome.
everybody can play it and everybody likes it. And even if you're tired as an adult, like, it works really well because there's minimal brain power. We also like the I found it. I is like your I, EYE, found it.
Okay.
So it's just a deck of cards, and you each have a scene on a card. So you can do as many as you want. And then there's teeny tiny little details. So if you flip a card over and it's a basket, then you have to look at your card and you have to find the basket. And if you're the one that finds it and gets rid of all your cards, then you win.
I have a Disney edition of this.
We do. We have a Disney one. We have a pirate one.
Yes, I love that one.
So find board games. I mean, are these things expensive?
No.
Where can you find board games?
Not at all. Or you just put we get all of ours on Amazon, but honestly, our grandparents, that's what my parents get for the boys every Christmas, is
Awesome.
that they get them games. So you get a new game every time.
Cool. I know that my
So-
daughter loves Uno. When you can buy
Oh,
Uno
yeah.
at the 99-cent store, you get a deck of cards. You can play a
Absolutely.
million different card games. She loves War.
Yeah.
You
My
know,
5-year-old can play chess. Like,
Yeah.
they can learn it. Strategy games, they can learn it. You just have to find that time when you're not tired,
Right.
and you can sit and have the patience to teach them.
Right.
And not always letting them win, and that's totally fine. It's a
Yep.
part of life to lose, and it's okay.
It's true.
But
So what does it look like transitioning from let's play a game to it's now bedtime?
Right, so we usually say brushing your teeth in between there. I feel like that's just a good kind of reset and transition back into getting ready for bed. So everybody go brush your teeth, grab a book, go to mom and dad's bed.
Okay.
And so my oldest is usually like taking a shower or whatever it is, but then the littles at this point in time will go and we'll read a book.
Okay.
And then after that, it's getting your last drink. And we have something, ours is called a Mela clock.
Yes.
But it's basically like an alarm clock. It can be. Ours doesn't make any noise ever. But it is basically a nightlight, and it has the cutest little digital face on it, and you set it. So ours goes to sleep at 7 p.m. So Mela goes from a smiley face to a sleeping smiley face. So her eyes close at 7 o'clock. And my kids know, it's 7 o'clock, it is bedtime.
I love that.
So if they get in bed at 6:59, Mela's not asleep yet, we have one more minute. Or if it's 7:10, because there is a little bit of flexibility, obviously. I'd say between 7 and 7:30, we're in bed.
Yep.
But they know Mela's asleep. We are not talking back about wanting to read one more book. We are not asking to play one more game. Mela has told us that it is bedtime. We are going to bed.
Right.
And then she sleeps. And then in the morning time, you have set it to a predetermined time. So for us, at 6:15, she turns yellow. And for my boys, that means that they can get up and turn their light on, and they can play quietly in their room for 15 minutes. And then at 6:30, Mela turns green, and she's awake for the day. And now you can come out.
Yep.
Our expectation in the morning is that they get dressed during that 15-minute time. So when they come out of their room, they're ready
That's
to
really
go.
cool.
So for us at night, that has taken the fight completely out of bedtime. There is no argument.
Right.
And I can't remember the last time anyone complained about it.
Right. So that's the question. So a lot of the families that are going to be watching and paying attention to this conversation are asking the question like, okay, fine, like you've created this crazy routine that is awesome and it's working for you.
How do I get there?
How on earth do I get from, I've got kids that are already 5, 6, 7, 12, 13. How do I start a routine
Who are used to
now
watching
and
TV
get from here to there?
Right.
Without starting World War III in my own house.
Absolutely.
Which, honestly, part of the process of getting from here to there is being willing to deal with World War III. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but
Too soon.
the extinction burst is what it is. We've talked about this extinction burst thing, and that's basically anytime we are going to change something and say we are removing, let's say in this case, we're removing the phones and the TV at 6:30, and we're going to start a routine of going to bed and we're going to play games. You first of all need to have a replacement where you're going to replace something that they liked with something else. You also have to recognize that at the beginning, they're not going to like it, and they might throw a little fit, and they might throw a bigger fit the next day. But once you get past a few days of these fits, know that the extinction burst will start to come down.
Absolutely.
And
and
you
they see
cannot
that
give in, right?
You're going to hold the line. Yeah, the first few days they're going to see, oh no, we're going to go back to the way it was. I'm going to push that. But once they see that you're going to keep that structure routine,
You cannot give in to this. So whatever the routine is, you start the routine and you keep it. You
Absolutely.
need to, let's say if you're going to start a new routine, let's keep it for a week before you make any changes. Because you'll want to make some changes once you feel it out for your own family. But you need to deal with the extinction burst, don't change anything, and then eventually you'll get to where you're going to be. So what else would be your advice? Like, should you do everything at once?
No, that's
Okay.
what I was gonna say. I think baby steps are great because
Okay.
anytime as an adult we're doing something, if it's more than one thing, we're not gonna probably want to do cold turkey, right? We're probably gonna pick something and say, okay, let's work on our screen time this week.
Okay.
So we normally watch X amount. Let's limit it to this time when we're prepping dinner, or let's limit it to this time when I'm maybe helping sister with her homework, and you're gonna sit and you're gonna watch something. Let's figure out when that time is going to be an hour before our bedtime so that we can have our screens turned off and have that wind down time.
Okay.
But
how long should kids have their screens off at the minimum before bed?
It needs to be hours before bed.
2
I would
hours?
say 2 hours
Wow.
minimum.
Okay.
Because that blue light does the same thing that the sunlight does for our eyes, which we're naturally inclined to look for that light to wake us up. And so if you're giving them it in their hands before bed, you're going to have a bigger fight, actually.
Right.
So I like that idea of maybe first working on screen time as your first step for the first couple weeks. That would be a game changer for sleep.
So let's say if we're talking about circadian rhythms, right? So explain to me the sensors in the bottom of your eyes. Explain that part of circadian rhythm.
So I just tell everyone, get as much early morning sunlight. So anytime before 9 a.m., and I know that's tricky, right? Especially going into the winter time, but having kids be outside in the morning, if you have pets, having them participate in taking the dog out, or even just, we're really lucky here in San Diego. We have good weather.
Well, let's be honest.
Play outside.
We all drive to school. We all get in cars and we drive our kids to school, right? And that drive is typically anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes long. And if you're not wearing sunglasses, you're not tinting the sun that's getting into your eyes. And if you can, roll down the windows. Right?
Get direct. It is beneficial having direct.
The more glass you have between you and the sun, because most modern cars have some kind of natural tint in their car windows. So if you roll down the windows, and like what I've started doing with my daughter when I drive her to school in the morning, I take off my sunglasses. I got blue eyes, and sun kills my eyes.
Straight in.
I drive to school like this. But having the ability to drive in takes me about 30 minutes because I'm coming from a little farther. And both of us are getting that no screen, but getting that real sunlight in our eyes at 7 o'clock in the morning. And that's great. That starts the circadian rhythm right there.
I think another it's not easy because mornings are hard, let's be honest. But even getting to school 5 or 10 minutes early means that they get 5 or 10 minutes on the playground with their friends.
I was going to say our school intentionally has
so for
outside.
us, it's actually a reward when we get out of the house early because it means that they get that extra recess, right?
Well, and also they're outside of the classroom. They're in the sun. Okay.
So
Directly
they have
playing,
all of those interactions. They get their wiggles out. I mean, it's beneficial to everyone, even if they get that 5 minutes, right?
Yes, and research shows that even if you turn an overhead light on 30 to 45 minutes before that wake up time, you can shift your kids' wake up time earlier. And I also want to go back to what Jenny said too, is the structure doesn't end on the weekend. So I noticed that a lot when I'm reading through documents from parents and families, is that on the weekends they'll stay up way later, and research shows it is more beneficial for kids to have the exact same bedtime and wake up time than even just the amount of hours they have. Amount of hours is really important, but that same wake and sleep time on the weekends, I think will be huge. So on weekends, you can get them up and get them outside, even if it's in the courtyard, throwing a ball back and forth in the apartment complex, riding a bike around, but getting them outside would really help their sleep.
And let's be honest, on a Friday night, it's kind of nice to have your kids asleep at 7:30.
Yeah, you get you time.
And also, to speak to Friday nights, for us, that's pizza and movie night. And so it's so nice to be able to say, okay, we didn't have our screens on, and so you can use TV as a reward, not just as something that is the norm where we're going to come home and we're going to turn it on. So, and I know we've talked about this. It is hard because at the end of the night as parents, like that is when our tank is empty. But being able to get that final push in, for us, we call it the power hour. Let's get through the power hour. Let's do it as a family. If picking up is something that you want to have your kids help with, set a 10-minute timer and everybody picks up. Turn on some fun music while you're doing it, or have a dance party when you're done. Like, those little things that to us, it's like, that's not a reward. It is for them because it's family time.
Yeah.
Have a family song, whatever it is, but set the timer because this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Anytime you and I are doing something that we don't want to do, we want to think in our mind, okay, how long is this going to take?
Right.
Okay, I know that in 1 hour, I'm XYZ, whatever, I'm going to be done with this.
Right.
And for kids, it's the same thing. If a student doesn't like writing, let's say, or whatever it might be, they know that at recess, and they come back in, it's going to be a new subject.
Right.
So it's something that they know is going to pass, right? So same with not having screen time.
Right.
Friday's coming.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're saying is that screens should probably be off at the latest around the same time that the sun's going down. If we don't want it to screw up their natural circadian rhythm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because the other side of circadian rhythm is that your brain knows when the sun rises, and the reason why you need 10 to 30 minutes of sunlight in the morning is because there's receptors in the bottom of your eyes, and those receptors receive sun, and they tell you that, you tell your brain, okay, it's time to be up, the sun is up.
Yep.
Studies are also showing, this is very interesting, that even those that are blind have the same receptors, and so they need sunlight in their eyes as well. And so those are another miraculous part of the human body that having sunlight in your eyes in the morning tells you when it's time to wake up. That also works for sleep, right? So one of the things that they say that is really important if you want you to be able to go to bed on time is that you are there and you watch the sun go down. Be outside for the sun setting, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that can help. It's not something that you can do every day. But if the rule is sun's down, that means screens are off.
Yeah.
That is one way to help set that circadian rhythm.
For sure.
So if step one would be screens done when the sun's down. That could be a big step one that could start the whole thing. What would the next step? I would say consistent schedules.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
A bedtime. I know that there are families that go to church in the evenings, but try
Sports,
work
yeah.
together and decide on a time that's going to be the every night
Yep.
bedtime. Same time to go to bed, same time to wake up is game changer for.
Right. And the reason why schedules are so important, having a consistent schedule, is because if there is an argument about it's time to go to bed and well, if there's a schedule, I'm sorry.
Point to the schedule.
This
Right.
is not me right now
Yeah.
fighting you against what you want right now. This is the schedule that we've had for the last 6 months, year, 2 years.
Yep.
We're not breaking it. This is just the way it is. Sorry. So that eliminates the argument. That's the other benefit to that Mela clock is that this is the rule. Mela is the rule. Mela is yellow.
Mela
That
goes
means
on
you-
vacation with us,
Oh, right.
by the way.
Yeah,
So,
I mean the clock is yellow.
Yep.
That means that you can't get out of bed or you can't get out of your room until the clock is green. I mean, we have the same thing at our house. Our daughter doesn't come in until 7 o'clock on weekends.
Yep.
6:30 is when she can get out of a room.
and
on
it really
weekdays.
creates a sense of independence for them because they don't have to say, can I get up now? Right? They have something that's able to kind of guide them in that. If you don't have that clock, you could always just get a super old school digital clock.
Yeah.
And when there's a 7 or when there's a 6, or you could even write the number across and they could look at it that way.
And
What
Mela
else?
made me think of melatonin.
Nah.
And I do see a lot of parents writing that as a supplement that they're using. So I know sleep is a hard thing for our kids. And I just wanted to really encourage parents to talk to their pediatricians about that. I know that using melatonin at younger ages can really mess with hormones.
Yep.
I wouldn't imagine though, research has shown that 2 to 3 days of this sunlight and then the structure, you do see the benefits.
Right.
So trying
Right.
out the outside time instead of melatonin, I would really encourage that.
Well, melatonin is actually naturally released from your brain when your circadian rhythm is correct. So typically, if we are having to use melatonin for our kids, it's because we are trying to override a problem in their brains and their circadian rhythm. If you have a correct circadian rhythm, the melatonin is naturally released, just like dopamine or serotonin, which your brain releases. The irony and the strange thing about melatonin versus dopamine and all this other stuff is that dopamine is an illegal thing. You can't get dopamine at the drugstore. You can get melatonin, which is kind of weird. Also, melatonin happens to be a medication or drug or whatever you want to call it. I forget the exact term, but anyway, melatonin is not necessarily controlled.
Yeah.
There is very little
Oh, sure.
controls and quality controls with melatonin, and independent studies have shown that, say, a 5 milligram tablet of melatonin,
will
the
have-
ranges of actual melatonin is insane. We're going from
Be very careful with that, yeah.
2 grams to 30 grams. So
milligrams.
Sorry, the amount of melatonin that's in a pill of melatonin is all over the place, and that's because it's not an FDA-approved deal. It's not something that is constantly monitored. I don't know. I am very hesitant to use melatonin with my own kid because you don't know what you're really giving my daughter.
Yeah.
It's way safer and way easier and better to get that circadian rhythm correct.
Yes.
So
And
I'm going to
think
restate
about-
really
go ahead.
quick the minimum hours of sleep for
Yes,
kids.
this is important.
So 3 to 5 years old. So we're talking basically, I would say, I don't know, birth. At birth you can just sleep forever, but 3 to 5 years old. So that's right up to around kindergarten age.
Yeah.
Kindergartners should be sleeping 10 to 13 hours a day.
Yeah.
Okay. A 6 to 12 years old should be sleeping 9 to 12 hours a day. A 13 to 18-year-old should be sleeping 8 to 10 hours a day. So basically, until you hit adulthood, you should be sleeping 8 to 10 hours a day. I think the average.
I think even adults it's a lot
it's
higher than
recommended.
what the average would be.
At least 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Right.
I know that I get 7 on
Right.
a realistic week, and I know that when I go to bed a little bit earlier and I get extended periods of 8 hours of sleep, I feel way better.
Yeah.
So I mean, those are the minimums that kids need, and it's
Right.
way more important for them than it is for us because their brains are still developing. And if we screw up their sleep patterns or their nutrition or their exercise and they're on social media too much when they're young, their brain literally wires different. That's why this is so important. That's why this conversation is so important.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. What
I
were
was
you
just
saying?
going to say, imagine if we do the 2 tweaks, which were really just starting step by step of, okay, I'm going to pick a bedtime and stick with that, and then structure the screen time and move it back, remove some of that screen time.
Seriously, that could change the world.
I mean, you studies show that the screen time is increasing anxiety and depression in our kids left and right. I can't tell you how many kids I've met with in counseling, and it's always related to messaging or something on social media. And then they're getting better sleep, which impacts mood too. I mean, it's just a game changer for our society.
Absolutely.
In our classrooms at the beginning of the year, a lot of times the teachers will make like a classroom contract, right? So the kids kind of have buy-in of like, hey, these are our class rules. We're gonna make this constitution for my 5th grade class, and then they all sign it. And I think that including your kids in the plan is great.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean necessarily that they're setting the bedtime,
charge.
but
They're not the boss of the plan.
right. But so like a routine chart. So I just got this off of Pinterest and it was free, and you can make it say anything you want. You can make it say like Billy's whatever, and you can change all of the pictures, all of it's editable. So in this one, this could be morning time, this could be your nighttime routine,
That's awesome.
or you could just make it nighttime. So as soon as they've made their bed, they get to close it. And then, this one's still open. Did you not get, you don't have your uniforms on yet.
Yeah.
But I think that just even having a nighttime one, if that's what you need, whatever you need it to be, I think something like this is great. It's visual.
Yep.
They don't have to be able to read.
Yep.
And then there's that sense of accomplishment when I've closed all of my tabs and I can say, Mom, look, I got ready and I did my whole day.
That's
You
awesome.
wanted to have rewards and, attached to it, you could.
I mean,
But-
you could laminate that and then put little Velcro things in the back.
Velcro
Every
or
day you just
magnet,
or magnet.
absolutely.
And so you just found this on the internet.
This was just off of Pinterest.
And what did you search?
I actually saw it in an Instagram reel.
Okay.
But when I was on my screen time.
Okay.
But I think that there's something of value to this. It's visual,
Yep.
it's structured.
Yep.
I know that I have to do these things before I go to bed, and it's consistent.
Right.
They're gonna do this on the weekends too.
Okay, so let's go through a list of resources that we
Sure.
could recommend parents to go look for. I mean, that's one. Just literally Google search daily routine for kids, or nighttime routine for kids,
Yep.
or what else? What else could you search to find that?
Pinterest alone has boards and boards and boards of just routines for your
Routine
kids.
charts?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Or game ideas. There's boards of family game ideas, even by age groups.
Okay.
So if you've got teenagers, if you've got elementary kids,
Okay.
but I think
Yeah.
Pinterest is a great place to start, and there's a lot of free templates that people can
Yes.
print.
And
Okay.
on Pinterest, there's access to games that you can do without buying a board game.
Right.
I've gotten a ton of games that just need dice, or
Or a deck
just
of
need
cards,
sheet of
spoons.
paper.
Yeah. You have
they'll
spoons
teach
and a deck
you
of
how to
cards.
use.
Yeah.
pretty
Everyone
cheap
can get a hold of a
supplies,
deck of
yeah.
cards. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so I mean, where else? What are other resources? Do we know any influencers? Because I mean, social media had all kinds of really neat stuff.
Sure.
Because we as adults, we have social media accounts. Typically, Instagram is what I look at, and there's all kinds of really cool people on Instagram that had all kinds of stuff about nutrition or about other stuff. So are there any specific resources that you know of that you draw from?
Sure. So Busy Toddler, even though it has the name toddler in it, she is all about the hands-on. Like if you see her backyard, it is not big. And she literally has a mud corner.
That's awesome.
And it is a corner where her kids and all their neighbor friends come out and they just play in mud.
Okay.
And is it a mess? Is it hard to clean up? You know, you have to kind of think about all those things. But for her, it's worth it because her kids are being creative for an hour. But she also has a ton of game ideas, sensory bins that are not expensive. She makes rainbow rice, where she dyes rice and then she saves it for years. Like it just lives in her cupboard.
Awesome.
She's a good one. Days of Gray.
Okay, so first one was?
Busy Toddler.
Then?
Days of Gray.
Anybody else?
And she has 3 boys.
Okay.
Those are my 2 favorites.
Okay. What about resources for you?
Well, I mean, I do like Huberman Lab because he gives you quick summaries that you can understand, and it's all about the sleep and growth mindset.
Who is Huberman?
He's from Stanford, so he's a professor.
He is where I first dove into the circadian rhythm. I shared it with you, and I'm like, I dove knees deep into the Huberman sleep circadian rhythm stuff.
I like Dr. Becky as well, and there's another one I follow, and it was about different colors of nutrition on their plate, but I can't think of the name. But I did want to just...
Kids Eat in Color.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the one.
Kids Eat in Color.
Yeah, my wife told me about that one, and I looked it up. It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, I was going to steal from an expert, Debbie Beyer.
Oh, okay.
And I love, in one of the last podcasts that they shared, the 3-3-3.
Right.
And it goes along with you if you think about sleep. She talked about the most important times of day for our kids, and I know we're tired as parents, but it's our chance to connect. And it's the first 3 minutes in the morning, the first 3 minutes when we pick them up. And we say this as a school all the time, but again, we can't control it. When we see parents on their phones when their kids first get in the car, it just helps. We feel for the kids because they're so excited to tell their parents about something from the day. And I know, I've been there. I got an email on my phone. I've been there as a parent. I'm not judging in any way. But those 3 minutes when we put those kids in the car, they want to connect. And then the 3 minutes, if you've ever noticed, you try to lay a kid down for bed, all of a sudden, that's when they want to debrief their whole day.
Let me tell you about my day.
So I had to personally back our time up because I do know they are trying to push the bedtime a little bit.
100%.
So what I did is I
Pillow
just put a
talk.
15-minute buffer in, and I'm not rushing them, and I say, I am ready to listen. They still end up going to sleep at the same time. They don't know that I started the brush the teeth thing about 15 minutes earlier, but it was because I was messing up. I was doing that, and yelling and getting up frustrated. I'm a mom too. So anyway, those last 3 minutes to really connect with them, whether it's them sitting on your lap and you reading them a story, even if it's in your own language, just having that connection is huge. So I just wanted to throw in that expert.
No, that's great.
Absolutely.
Debbie Beyer's an expert.
Okay, so let's sum up. Sleep, really important. The benefits of sleep will change and can change our lives, our kids' lives. They focus better, they can attend at school, they have better friendships, they're happier, their mood control is better, there's less depression. I mean, the benefits go on and on and on. Things that we can do, have a consistent routine that is consistent. Blame the routine, they did not you. Get some tools. If you can get a Mela, get a hold of one of those. You can find them on Amazon.
Teach Me Clock is the other name for it.
Teach Me Clock, okay. Get a hold of a routine chart. Those are so valuable. Every one of our classrooms has a routine chart. Get a hold of a routine chart. Follow someone who knows what they're doing. You got social media accounts. What were the 2 you mentioned?
Days of Gray and Busy Toddler.
Okay, and then Kids Eat in Color. That one actually probably also kind of overlaps with some of the sleep stuff. If you want to learn specifically about circadian rhythms, Huberman Lab has a social media presence. He also is a podcast. It's pretty high level stuff. He's a neuroscientist at Stanford University. But if you want to listen to that, that's really valuable.
And can I also just say for the routine chart? Sometimes you don't have to overthink it. Like you could, I've done it before where I'm like, okay, we're having a rough night, and I'll grab a pen and I draw little stick figures, and I put a big old check box, and they get so pumped, and I'm like, refer to the list because our parents, they stop listening sometimes, so it'll help. You can draw. You don't have to
or
print.
just
That's awesome.
a whiteboard.
A whiteboard. We use whiteboards all the time. Just one whiteboard with one whiteboard marker is magic on routine and setting structure.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. We covered a lot of ground.
We did.
And I know we could talk for hours more, but I think this is a great starting point for a lot of people. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.